Here as part of the Hammer Betting Network and presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I'm Rob Pizzola. I'm a little bit depressed right now as my Dallas Cowboys shit the bed today, but we will get through it tonight. Same as usual. For those of you who are new here, going to recap the day that was, going to look ahead to week 4 in the NFL. Pinnacle set to post the openers for week 4 very shortly here. So as soon as they do, we'll bring them up on screen. We'll break them down. Now, usually my partner in crime here on Sunday nights is Clive Bixby. Clive is away for this week, dealing with a personal matter. So instead this week, I bring in a good friend of mine. You can read his NFL stuff, his college football stuff at The Athletic. His name is Austin Mock. Follow him on Twitter at amock419. Austin, pretty eventful day, I would say, today.
Yeah, I mean, we had a little bit of everything with I still can't get over what Miami did to Denver. But then we had obviously the Cowboys, we had the Ravens, just upsets galore. So that was about as eventful as a peak NFL right there today.
Totally peak NFL. So I'll recap what the day that was for me. I lost a big play here on Carolina in the late slate, which I'm kind of bitter about just because of the amount of injuries that Carolina suffered over the course of the game, but the big one being to Frankie Louvu. Once that happened, Seattle just was basically running the ball at will. But before we get into the games from today and recap, so reminder to everyone in here, if you could quickly smash that like button down below, click that thumbs up. It helps people find our content in real time. It elevates it in the YouTube algorithm. If you're not subscribed here yet on Forward Progress, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell as well for notifications as we are going to get into it. Looks like the chat is pretty lit already tonight. Debates about whether the earth is flat. I don't know what else is going on in here. Obviously, the Dak Prescott hot takes, are going to come in right now. But all right, let's get to it. Big thing for me I wanted to talk about right now, which I think is going to be very much a talking point, but the Chargers-Vikings, I think, ended up being the game of the day in the sense of like the way it finished, which was like the peak Chargers, peak Vikings. But the fourth down call from Brandon Staley, I believe it was like 4th and 1, their own territory, their own 30-ish yard line. I don't have the yard line up in front of me, but deep in their own territory, they go for it. And a lot of people, taking to Twitter to want to massacre Staley immediately for that decision. I was personally fine with that. I think if anything, Kellen Moore's got to take the blame for like running the quick handoff right up the gut. But in that situation, like, I don't think I'm trusting my defense if I'm the Chargers in that spot.
Yeah, I totally agree. Kind of remind me of the Pats? Belichick did that against the Colts so many years ago, right? And I think afterwards, like in an interview, he said, like, I just didn't think we were getting a stop if we punted. So I tried to win the game. And I think you kind of, with the result of what happened, you see that it's not a guarantee that they score there. And I think maybe it's a little bit different if they're not up. If they're up 3, maybe it's a little bit different. I think it's 100% different if they're only up 1 or 2. But still, I think it's the same thing where he just said, we're not getting the stop. And I don't think anybody really trusted the Chargers to get a stop in that scenario. But hey, they got to stop in the red zone, right? Like, but they almost didn't. Like, it was right there. So I don't blame him for the decision. I think Staley's not perfect, but I think that one, I think he was right by going for it.
Yeah, I don't think Staley's very good, but we saw him get back to like his old roots and aggressive ways today. If you want to fire Staley over something, there was a 3rd and 6 in the game where there was a 10-yard holding penalty, and basically the Chargers had to decide whether to accept the penalty, make it 3rd and 16, or make it 4th and 6. It was very clearly going to be a situation where the Vikings were going to go for it on 4th and 6. I cannot believe that they declined that penalty. Vikings ended up, I think, maybe scoring a touchdown on that play, or at least picking up a big gainer.
Jefferson touchdown, I believe.
Right.
I think it was that one.
Like, that to me was the big mistake. But ultimately, you're right, Austin. I think at the end of the day, you see that in the range of outcomes of not getting the first down on that 4th and 1 is your defense getting a stop. And that's exactly what happened. And they won the game. So I don't know why people are so upset about that play. But we're starting to see Pinnacle open up for next week right now. So let's just get into it. We'll do a lot of our recap along the way here. And we're going to start with the Thursday night football game. I believe Joey Knish has already said that this is going to be the most pivotal primetime football game in the history of the NFL. Of course, week 4, 2023. It is a divisional game, the NFC North. Detroit Lions traveling on the road to Lambeau to take on the Green Bay Packers. Opening line here looks like Detroit laying 2 on the road, and the total is 45. I still don't know how Green Bay won today.
Yeah, they're. I don't know. It's like maybe it's just like the young quarterback. You know, he I know he's been in the league 3 years or whatever it's been now, but not a lot of experience. He has moments. Jordan Love looks like pretty good. You're like, okay, and like you see LaFleur has he has the scheme to get it done. And then there's other moments where you're just like, yeah, this is not working. And I know they had a bunch of injuries, and obviously that's weighed in here, but I don't know what to make of them. Like I wouldn't be. There's such a wide range of like I think they could struggle to score 20, like we saw today, but then we saw in the fourth quarter they put up 18, and it's like okay, maybe they can score 30. So I'm kind of Green Bay's a tough team to back right now, definitely if they have injury issues.
Yeah, so that's the thing about this game that makes it so hard. So for the audience here who potentially might have joined me last week on the broadcast, the one thing that I got severely wrong was the line movement in the Detroit and Atlanta game. Other than that, I think we did a fairly good job, me and Clive last week. That was like the big miss. And that was just purely Detroit injuries. Now, granted, anyone who played that early line, they still end up winning today. Who cares about the closing line value? Throw it in the trash. Winner's a winner, right? But this game is like completely dependent on injuries, in my opinion, because you have a Green Bay team who basically had all of their game time decisions not play today. And was that because they are preparing for Detroit in a big matchup on Thursday? Or was it because those guys actually couldn't go like at all? And I honestly have no idea, but I'm inclined to think that at least some of these Packers are back this week and there's going to be some Packers money. If not, I can see this being kind of the right range of the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if this flips and the Packers actually go off as a favorite.
Yeah, I think this could be the one where, like, again, things are trending, which they were with Green Bay this week, and we might see Green Bay flip, -1, -2 range. And then if it's last second, Wednesday evening, Thursday during the day, the guys can't go. But like I do think they picked their spot here. They didn't want to risk, divisional game with Detroit, obviously, so that's very important. But like Bakhtiari, like I thought he was like kind of close to playing 2 weeks ago, I guess last week. And it was just like the turf conversation, right? And then he came back, and again, he was the guy that was trending. So maybe they just thought, hey, short week, let's make sure he's 100% good to go for a divisional game at home. And then like Aaron Jones was on the field today working out. So I think it's likely that we see this move again until it's final. Who knows what that final injury report looks like. I agree. I do think Green Bay probably moves into the short favorite range here with things trending their way.
Yeah, I like this comment by Connor here. I'd like to tease Green Bay. I kind of am in the same boat as well. I do think that it's going to be a close game. And that's not to say that there's like no possibility for a blowout, but I'm inclined to believe that Detroit would be hard pressed to win by margin on the road at Lambeau on a short week. Now, Detroit has a lot of injuries as well. Maybe they see some players back, although it looks like the timetable for a lot of these guys is just a little bit longer for them, especially on the offensive line with the injuries that they have at left tackle and right guard. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I do think that this line move will be driven by who's in and who's out. And I think the likelihood that Green Bay gets some key players back in Christian Watson, possibly Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari, Jair Alexander. It's actually nuts that they won today without those four because I'm just watching it on the TV here, but the New Orleans Saints missing that 46-yard field goal. But I'm inclined to believe that Green Bay is going to get some money. All right. On to game number 2, as we will continue to run through this as Pinnacle opens them up. Just a reminder to people out there, get this topic of conversation a lot. Why would I bet at Pinnacle? Why would I bet at a sharp sports book? Pinnacle right now is going to give you a better limit on every single one of these bets than any other sports book that's out there. Not only are they going to give you better limits on that in terms of the ability to get down, but they're also not going to limit you going forwards for betting openers. It's one of the beauties of betting at a sharp sports book. They actually just want your information. They want you to bet into them so they can shape the market. So for those who are wondering, that's why I constantly advocate for Pinnacle. That's why we use Pinnacle odds on this show. They've been in business for 25 years for a reason. Bet smart, bet Pinnacle. Use code HAMMER if you are going to sign up to Pinnacle in Ontario. And remember, please play responsibly. That is extremely important. Okay. We got London games back in the mix for next week, which is kind of depressing because there's nothing worse than losing the 9:30 a.m. game and getting your day started on a wrong foot. But it's the Jacksonville Jaguars as the home team against the Atlanta Falcons. The opener here is Jags -3, key number, obviously, and the total 44, another key number in this spot. We talked a little bit about Detroit, but we didn't really break down their game today. I was extremely unimpressed with both of these teams, Atlanta and Jacksonville today, Austin. Atlanta got into a game state where it was just disastrous for them, trailing. They ended up with 48 passes and 19 rushing attempts. And I don't even know what happened with Jacksonville, but like special teams gaffes. And I really don't know now what to make of the Jags going forwards.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I've been low on Atlanta because I just Ritter, like it's going to get on tape that like you can just sit back and say, hey, do not run the ball on us. We're going to make you throw it because he just hasn't shown that ability. And then Jacksonville is like underperforming by a huge margin here. So like I thought today they were like for sure have offensive success against Houston. They couldn't do it. And then like when they started to like kind of get some momentum, their defense or special teams let them down. They're a mess. I didn't have much faith in their defense going into the year, but the offense I thought would be fine. Definitely against the pretty easy opponents, and it just has not happened yet. So this is a tough one for me. I does Jacksonville get any home field here for being the quote unquote,
because they've done it before? The London team,
like right? Like do they know what to do and the practices, whether it's rest, sleep cycle, whatever it is. But I like my numbers, just the early numbers. I haven't really updated anything from today, but I lean that this might go towards Jacksonville. But like again, I'm super low on Atlanta, but they gave me no reason to believe in them today. So that's kind of where I sit, and it's one of these games where I don't want to bet on either of these teams, to be honest. Like Jacksonville's they're in like a prove it mode to me right now, and Atlanta, if you can't throw the ball in the NFL, I don't want anything to do with you.
Yep, I'm kind of in the same boat of like subjectively, again, I don't run my numbers this early in the week. Subjectively, like this just kind of feels right, where if somebody presented me with this, it's like nothing stands out as something I want to bet immediately. The thing I'll make an excuse here for Jacksonville at the very least today. They had a -2 turnover margin. They had the special teams gaffes with like the blocked field goal. There was the return touchdown, which by the way was actually like the most insane return touchdown that might have happened. That like wasn't a player throwing it across the field. I still don't even know how that happened, but it was nuts. Atlanta,
like nobody touched him.
No one touched. Like the up blocker brings it for a touchdown. Like I cannot believe that happened. But like, there's a reason that they kind of got blown out. Now, I don't want to excuse that because Houston is down literally 4 of their starting 5 offensive linemen right now. They have big injuries in the secondary. It should have been a game where the Jags performed a lot better. But with Atlanta, for perspective, everyone's going to think about like Zach Wilson in terms of like worst offensive performance of the day, right? Like that's just going to be stuck in everyone's heads. The Zach Wilson-led New York Jets had 2.8 yards per play today. The Atlanta Falcons had 2.8 yards per play today. They matched them. This is against the Detroit Lions defense, indoor, on the fast track, banged up defense, especially in the secondary, and they couldn't get anything going. I don't know that I could like I don't know that I could go back to Atlanta in the near future right now. The quarterback mismatch in this game, even with Lawrence not playing well, just seems too much to overcome. Like we've come a bit, right, since the offseason with where we are right now. You would have thought this would have been a pretty valuable bet if it was a week 1 game and you were getting Jags -3.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. If 3 weeks ago we said, hey, that London game, Jags are only laying 3, I feel like it's an auto bet. Like if you could get limits into that, you're probably like, yeah, I'll take that, whatever. Like that's like what do you think that would have been preseason? What was the preseason look ahead line on that?
I don't look at those markets. It had to be like probably at least 4.5.
Yeah, and I mean we talk a lot. Like I always say, like it's just we joke about a better QB model, and it's kind of like against the Jags when Patrick Mahomes was getting 3, 2.5, whatever that number was early in the week. It's like an auto bet, and I don't want to say it's an auto bet here, but like the difference in quarterback play here, even with Lawrence not playing well, like the Jags were fine today. Really, it was like the big plays, like from a success rate standpoint, the game was even, which again is a concern. But like if Tank Dell had 2 huge catches, the special teams thing we're talking about it, and it's just is that repeatable? I feel like it's a good buy low spot on Jacksonville, and I don't think it's a good buy low spot in Atlanta.
So the Westgate summer look ahead was -4.5 for Jags. Well, Robert says -4, but either way in that range, which makes sense. Yeah. This is what scares the shit out of me in terms of if you're going to fade Atlanta at any point in the near future. I don't think we're quite at the point where Ritter's going to get pulled mid-game yet. Like if they put up a stinker next week in Jacksonville, then I think we have like some serious quarterback conversations that are happening in Atlanta. But at some point or another, that's going to be one where I'm going to have a bet against Atlanta, and I'm just going to see Taylor Heineke coming in like the third quarter, and I'm going to be like, oh no, because I think that's going to be a substantial upgrade for them.
Yeah, I think
Ritter can't throw the ball.
Yeah, I think he bought himself some time with that comeback against Green Bay, because like they weren't doing well on offense. It's kind of like the opposite of the Green Bay game today. They were not having any success really, and like it's really so far they haven't been able to throw. Everybody sees the Kyle Pitts is like his stat lines, and Drake London's like, I drafted Kyle Pitts in a fantasy team. Like I just might as well blow it up now. But it's like Bijan making a great play is how they convert things. And that's it. So now people are like, films out there. We're just going to key in on this guy and like make Ritter throw to these, top 5, top 10 picks that they have at receiver and tight end. So I got to kind of see it to believe it here with Atlanta. And I don't know if it's happening because Ritter was not good last year. Like there really isn't any good tape on him so far in the NFL.
The interesting thing that I pick up from the Atlanta Detroit box score today is that Detroit ended up with 7 sacks in this game, which is, I know that like they hadn't had sacks against Kansas City and Seattle, but they were actually generating more pressure that just wasn't resulting in sacks. That manifested itself today. But also, if Detroit is getting home for 7 sacks in a game, that's not a good look. Just trying to think of if there were any key injuries for the Jags today. Nothing comes to the top of my head in terms of if I can remember off the top of my head there. The right tackle, Anton Harrison. He left. He walked to the locker room at the end of the game. So it's not like believed to be a big injury, but they could be without starting left tackle and right tackle next week, which would be of note. Although I'm not sure the Falcons are going to be the team that exposed that. All right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. Research flat Earth. It's not even close.
It really
Heineke,
isn't.
not Henke or whatever, but Heineke. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this kind of is fair point. Not exactly the same, I would say.
It's tough because like Tannehill at one time was able to kind of throw the ball. Like he was able to kind of punish you because they had the run game like going. Like what was that one? Was it 2019 when they had the like incredible play action numbers? Like because they had it going there. When you don't have a quarterback and throw the ball, you can't there's no such thing as creativity because you can't do anything but run the ball, like you're limited.
Yep. Totally agree. Okay. Not really sure where this is going to, oh, by the way, I mean, the comparison from Titans to Falcons is like it's Arthur Smith, right? He was the OC there and
Right.
now he's in Atlanta. So yeah, it does make a whole lot of sense. Okay. Next game. This is going to be the marquee matchup next week. It's the Bills at home to the Dolphins. The Bills opening up laying 2.5 at home. The total is 54. High total. Highest total in the league today was 54. It was Chargers Vikings. By the way, no idea. At first, I had no idea how it was going to get to the over in the first half because there's no scoring. Then I was like, how the hell did this game stay under? It was a lot of emotions right there. But ultimately, the Dolphins, you're a modeler too, like me, for people who don't know. I'm going to get to the point, like we're 3 games in, the Dolphins are going to start breaking the models from an offensive point of view. Like I don't really know how to value them because Jalen Waddle didn't play today. They have, Tyreek Hill and then Braxton Berrios and River Craycraft, who got hurt today, and Cedric Wilson. But yet they're still somehow scheming Tyreek Hill open like all over the field. They're running for, 250 yards. It was absurd. So I don't know what to do with this game, but definitely, again, I don't look at the look aheads. There has to have been a correction here because I'm surprised to see Buffalo less than a field goal.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say, like, obviously that offense is incredible. I mean, we saw it last year when when Tua was in. I know that they kind of struggled in like the last 4 games that he started, but for the most part, they were just the explosiveness. And like, that's the same thing we're seeing now. Like they have speed at every single position. Like they didn't even have Waddle today and they set records, like all-time records. But yeah, I tend to believe that when these crazy outlier performances happen, I don't know, outlier from the standpoint of you're not going to score 70, maybe ever again in the NFL, there's going to be too much of a jump here. Like I can't, again, you're buying a high spot here on the Dolphins. In my opinion, like you're probably going to see people come in. I would be kind of shocked that we don't see some Bills money come forward. The interesting is Waddle's injury report goes well and he comes back in. Maybe, it goes a little bit towards the Dolphins, but I think this is at least 3 before today, if Pinnacle had to hang a line.
Yeah. Speed kills. That's what's very evident about the Dolphins offense is, oh my God, they are extremely fast. Now, here's the thing I will say. I remember back to a game last year. This is not apples to apples. It's obviously different. We're in a new year now. You can say whatever you want to say, but I think it was Christmas, right around Christmas, because I remember the game was in Buffalo and fans were throwing snowballs at the Dolphins players in the end zone. I bet the Dolphins in that game. It was around a touchdown. We're now, essentially 4 or 5 weeks later with the amount of games in between, and we're now below a field goal. So I think very highly of the Dolphins. I really do. I also think very highly of the Bills. By the way, the Bills generated 9 sacks today. Now, very different story at Sam Howell, but the defense was all over it today. And they have been for 2 weeks straight now. Defense is coming together. They're figuring it out. They can get home. They can get pressure. I'm not confident at all in Miami's defense to generate stops against good offenses. I am confident that Buffalo occasionally can get off the field. And that's where I see these teams being a little bit different right now. But it's challenging. I think Buffalo's going to take money at some point or another to at least close a field goal.
Yeah. The thing about the Dolphins is it's all quick. Like, it's not all quick, but he wants to drop out. He's very good at anticipating. He does not have a rocket for an arm or anything like that. Right. And it's these quick, it's mostly that first crossing route to Tyreek Hill. It's there wasn't anybody within 20 yards of him, like a radius around him. Like, that's what they want. If you're Buffalo, if you can just get that first read away and take away those crossers where, again, that speed is going from a horizontal standpoint, you can kind of slow them down. They scored in that game last year. that you're referencing in December, but I don't expect Buffalo to like shut their offense down, but you can, like, if you can kind of get to it thinking a little bit, you can knock, and it's the pressure, and the Bills are going to be able to generate that. I don't think the Broncos, obviously, they did not generate that today. So I think we're inflating this. We're inflating our rating of the Dolphins. Like you said, it's going to break a lot of things because historic things don't tend to continue to happen, right? Like there's always regression to the mean.
Yeah, 70 points is not going to happen all that regularly. Now, listen, like it was an insane offensive performance, like absurd offensive performance, 61 success rate, 0.62. Like they scored 10 touchdowns today. They had 350 net yards rushing. Like it was absurd, but Denver is not Buffalo. Funny enough, I mean, I've seen a couple of these comments already. We got total can't be high enough. Bills Dolphins closes 61. I'm not actually convinced that this is going to go much higher.
Yeah, I it's kind of like the Chargers Vikings game in a sense of like that game didn't take over money last week, right? Like it kind of didn't really do anything.
It did like right off open, but like once it got above 50, it got up to 54 and a half and then got bet down slightly over the last couple of days.
Right. Like it's like I've said this in college, like when you get these totals below 40, it's like, come on, all it takes is like one big play and you're screwed. It's like one or two bad drives with these totals in the mid 50s. And it's like, man, there's not a lot of clock left. There's not that many possessions. So yeah, I mean, if you take away the big, like if Buffalo just wants to sit there and be like, hey, you can take the stuff underneath, we're just not going to get, like, you're not getting the explosives, this game gets shortened. So I don't think it's like automatically, hey, this is going to be a high 50s total at the end of the, week. So mid 50s, probably like the absolute highest. I just think it's very similar to the Vikings Chargers game. Like it'll eventually get to 54-ish, 54 and a half, and it'll struggle to go above that.
Yeah. I listen, like I think it's more likely to go up than down. Obviously, a team coming off a 70-point performance. Buffalo's offense back-to-back weeks has looked a lot better. They're throwing downfield more. I totally think it's more likely to go up than down. But I do think that there's going to be some people waiting until the last minute to end up betting the under in this game. And honestly, this is a good point. Like, it's funny how quickly we just forget about previous weeks. The Dolphins can be slowed down. New England did slow down the Miami offense. Now, they didn't win the game because New England's offense isn't anything to write home about, but there's opportunity to at least slow them down. This is going to be a really fascinating handicap this week.
Yeah, I think there was the key thing with that Patriots is this, like they had the Patriots had a 53% success rate in that game. Like the quickest way to slow down an opposing offense is to continue to get first downs when you're on offense because they're not on the field. I remember the first game, if I remember correctly, with Buffalo and Miami last year, I think Buffalo ran like 90 plays to like the Dolphins 44 because the Dolphins had a bunch of explosives and Buffalo just kept grinding these drives. So that's how you do it is you basically don't let them on the field. And obviously if you have to have a good offense to do that, like the Patriots, I wouldn't say it was good offense, but that's the Dolphins defense. I think that was kind of the point. I don't know if I trust the Dolphins defense to be able to like force 3 and outs to, hey, let's get our offense, 10 touchdowns today. That's not likely to happen because Buffalo's offense is too good.
Yep, I'm with you. For those of you who are in the chat right now or just watching the stream, just give us a quick like. If you don't mind, smash that like button down below. For those of you listening after the fact, we do put this up in podcast form when it's done. We do get a lot of listens on Monday morning. If you're listening in podcast form and you enjoy it, just rate and review 5 stars. It goes a long way to help us grow this thing. All right. The Minnesota Vikings 0-3. I'm sure all the rumors of Kirk Cousins getting traded to the Jets will be in full. They're there now. They're already out there. Not sure the Jets can make that happen with the Aaron Rodgers contract, but either way, Vikings start 0-3. They go to Carolina to take on the Panthers. The opener here, Pinnacle -3 plus 102. So kind of in like the 2.75-ish range. In terms of Minnesota favored on the road. The total is at 44, key number. I watched a lot of Carolina today. I watched a lot of both of these games today because I bet against Minnesota. I bet on Carolina. My opinion on Carolina is very dependent on whether or not Andy Dalton plays. Because if Bryce Young had played in Seattle today, the final score wouldn't have been 37-27. It might have been 37-6. The offensive line false started about 1 million times. Like, I don't know exactly how many, but I'd venture like at least 8 or 9 times. It was absurd. Dalton had to convert so many 3rd and longs. Ultimately, I don't like Carolina with Bryce Young behind this offensive line with this lack of weapons. I think Minnesota will find ways to score, generally a good offense. And as bad as their defense is, if Carolina can't move it like consistently on Seattle with Dalton, I just don't think that they're going to really be able to move it on anyone.
Yeah, and I think the Frankie Louvu injury is a big one. Like, Carolina's defense, definitely that front seven is kind of, I think, underrated, and he's a huge part of it. Like, he was a big surprise, out of nowhere when he's kind of the middle, I don't want to equate him to like the top linebackers of, the past year, but he kind of has that vibe of like a guy who, when he's on the field, things kind of just are good. And then we saw that you brought it up, how once he went out, Seattle could just run all day. But yeah, Young, it's just the rookie quarterback thing. It's just tough to be good right out of the gate, and he's not there. And like you said, they don't have any weapons. Like, it's bad. So he's got to make a lot of plays, and that's just not going to happen. So I think it's going to depend on that. If Dalton's ruled in, this might tick down to the 2.5s in that range, because I don't like who's betting this with Bryce Young at 2.5. Like, I feel like nobody's really lining up to get that, right? You need at least a field goal to even think about getting Young there. But I mean, I have no interest in Young in Carolina right now. It's just, again, offense can't move the ball. I know you're at home, but like, it's I just always like this when I go through the game. Like, I have my numbers, and then it's like, okay, where am I missing a matchup or something? And it's like, how are they going to move the ball? Like, I don't think the Vikings offense is good, but or defense, but that's my concern there. And it's going to this movement's going to depend on his status.
Yep. Great point. So like with Frankie Louvu, people forget that they lost their other inside linebacker, Shaq Thompson, and he's out for the season. So they're like decimated basically in the linebacking core. They lost Xavier Woods to an injury today. I think he pulled his hamstring. So now they're down J.C. Horn and Xavier Woods in the secondary. Jonathan Mingo left today's game with a concussion, which, like, okay, it's Jonathan Mingo, but when your receivers are already so bad, like, you can't, literally Adam Thielen, they are just peppering this guy with targets because nothing else can happen within that offense. It's a real struggle. Carolina went 10 of 19 on third down today. That was all Andy Dalton. He played very, very well, and they still ended up losing by double digits. My thought on this game, Austin, sorry to cut you off there, but my thought is that this total at 44, if Dalton plays, is low. Like, I think that this is going to go up because Minnesota is going to basically score on anyone. They can't stop a nosebleed. I didn't even think of this. Adam Thielen revenge game in the cards as well. I don't think this can close below 44. Like, I think this is going to go up.
Yeah, if Dalton's in, I think we could see this maybe get to like 45, or at least think about it. Because for the point, like, Dalton had a lot of pressure today. Like, they couldn't block, and he was standing in there and delivering passes. And like you said, I don't know if anybody's really going to stop Minnesota all year. Like, people are like, oh, the Bucs did in week 1. Like, they stopped themselves. And like, that's been the story. They fumbled again today. Like, they just kept doing it. They just can't hold on to football. So yeah, no, I'm in agreement there. If Dalton's in, I think this ticks up. Do you think if Young is in, do we dip below 44?
I think so. I think it's really quarterback dependent. Like, going into this week, there was a lot of people who were like, Bryce Young to Andy Dalton is a wash. I don't know how you watch today's game. Now, granted, it's Seattle. It's a little bit different than, watching Bryce Young play New Orleans and Atlanta. Easier defense, a lot of injuries in the secondary. Seattle got like even more injuries in the secondary today. But I don't know how you don't think this offense is just that much improved. They can't run the ball with Miles Sanders. They can't. This is 3 games in a row. They can't do it. So if you cannot run the ball and it falls on Bryce Young, it's big problems. If it falls on Dalton, he's at least more serviceable. I feel pretty strongly that if it's Dalton starting, which seems to be the most likely case, that we're going to get some over money in this game. I really see that.
Yeah, I think a good point there is like if you cannot run the ball, like that's such a key thing to like getting into third and manageable. Like I know that's like the bar is so low here, but like the difference between like 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 9 in this league, or just any level of football, is huge. And like Dalton, like you want to talk about like just overall difference. Like if you just had to go like what's the third, like you brought up the third down rate that they had today. What's the difference in Bryce Young's ability on third down and or their projection? Bryce Young on 3rd and long versus Andy Dalton on 3rd and long. Like it's huge. Like I'm 100% taking Andy Dalton without not even thinking, because he's been there, he's done that. He's not great, but he's serviceable.
Yep. I mean, we saw that today. We saw that today with him converting a bunch of 3rd and longs. Frank Brank, hilarious comment. Dalton is better than way too many starting QBs right now. People don't realize this, but Andy Dalton was 9th in quarterback success rate last year, much lower in EPA. So he was kind of like methodically working his way down the field a lot. But yeah, and a lot of bad O-lines in this league. And believe me, I think someone mentioned it up here before. It was 8 times they false started today. The NFL record is 11 in a game, but 8 times they false started. Yeah. And listen, there was a lot of crowd noise and whatever, but inexcusable. I don't really have an opinion on the side. Like I struggle to see somebody betting Minnesota to win by 4, considering all their games end up being close, right? But it does feel like if Minnesota was ever going to win by margin, this could be the game.
Just like, are they capable? They've been shown the ability to not play a 1-score game in 2 years. Like we're a year and a half we're going on, I guess. But yeah, no, it's. I think this move and the movement. I feel like it's not going to do anything until we get more of a picture on Bryce Young. Like I don't think people are going to like sprint in here to bet Minnesota, because if Dalton is the guy, you can get a better number. And I mean, how much do you think this moves if Young's in? Like, does this go up to 4? Do you think? Like, I don't like.
I think that this is priced for Dalton and that there has to be some sort of tangible move. By the way, Pinnacle just moved to 45 on this total as we're talking about it. So already some
Shout
betting towards the over. Yeah, listen, I mean, we do the show so that people can get down on opening numbers. I just hope that there's some leftovers for me later on this week. But yeah, that's already taken some money towards the over. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this next game, but it is a game. We can bet it. It's the Denver Broncos going on the road to Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Bears. We're at like another in-between line here at Pinnacle. -2.5, -124 is actually basically the equivalent of a -3. Total is 45.5. I don't really know what to say about either of these teams right now, but they're basically both pathetic. The Bears, despite the Bears were trailing by like 40 points for the majority of the game, or at least 30 points for the majority of the game, and they still finished with 87 net passing yards. Like, I don't even know how that's humanly possible. At least Denver like showed some signs of life in the beginning, and then their defense just completely gave up on the entire game once they got down by a ton. I don't have any clue where this is going to go. Subjectively, feels like an over game to me, but how do I want to bet on an over with a defense that just gave up 10 touchdowns? Like, the pride is on the line. You know what I'm getting at here? This is a tough one.
Yeah, so this is where like, okay, I got to be the opposite of what I said about Miami, right? Like Miami's breaking models. Is Denver broken on the defensive side? Are they undervalued now? Like, are we adjusting? Does it work both ways? Like, are we adjusting Miami too high and Denver too low type of thing here? Like, because here's the thing: coming into the year, the team that I was lowest on was the Chicago Bears. Like from like what the market perspective is, public perception, whatever. I did not see how this team would, like, obviously if like people are just like, hey, if Justin Fields figures out how to throw the ball, like, yeah, okay, if he does that, but that's a huge if. And he has shown, honestly, I'd say it's probably worse than what it was. Like last year, there was like a buzz. They played a bunch of close games. Like they're just not able to really do that this year. So like I'm sitting here like, do I really want like somebody under a field goal against the Bears here? Like a team that, again, cannot throw the ball, and they don't have a good defense. And like you said, Russ looked all right to start the game. I don't know if like they just kind of threw in the towel, when you're down 50, like what's the point of like continuing to play type of thing. But I don't know. That's where I kind of lean of like, who is betting Chicago with the state of their offense right now?
So this is the thing that I was going to say, right? And again, I intentionally, not that I intentionally don't look aheads, but like they're just not part of my weekly process or anything like that. So I really don't know, but it doesn't feel like Denver is downgraded at all here. Like it feels like Chicago, it's just like Chicago's the cancerous team, right? They don't cover. They never win. They never cover. Going back to last year now, I think if you look at their last 13 games, their defense on average has given up at least 40 points. I'm pretty confident in that. I think it was 39 points per game over their last 12 coming into today. Like we're up to 40 now. Denver can score on Chicago. I feel that pretty confident that Denver can move the ball on Chicago. Can Chicago move the ball on anyone right now is my question.
I'm super low on them. I don't know if they can. Like what they make this trade for DJ Moore, right? And it's like, hey, we can't even get him the ball. Like people are excited about that. Like, oh yeah. And I remember we've talked about it. It's like, hey, just cover DJ Moore. And like, I don't even know if you need to cover him anymore. Like, just don't give up basically it's like, don't give up the 60-yard run to Fields, like the scramble or whatever. Like that's like, I feel like that's really it. That's how they score. And I have no faith in this. I'm like, again, I feel like we're still super low. I know they have the whole, like you said, the cancers off the field issues and everything, but I just don't know how you're backing this team. Like if you're getting a field goal, maybe it's a little bit different here, but like if it's under it, it's like, who wants to do that? Like why go through the pain?
Yeah. I'm listen, I very much buy into like the NFL is like, the stock market, buy low, sell high. Like there is something to that, generally speaking. And that's not to say that every single time a team gets blown out, their stock is at their lowest, because that's not true. It could get lower for every single team, right? But I feel like if there's something that's going to happen in this game in terms of line movement, it has to be towards the over, because the defenses are flat out terrible. Denver does not generate pressure. They cannot. They physically cannot. Even against the Raiders O-line in week 1, they could not generate pressure. Chicago, on the other hand, they cannot stop anything. Like since they got rid of Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith last year, it's been a disaster. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure they had some significant injuries today in their secondary. Just looking at it now. Okay, yeah. Jalen Johnson left today with a hamstring injury. Tyreek Stevenson left with, first to get looked at for a concussion. Now they're saying he was sick, illness. I don't know if it's a concussion or not. Josh Blackwell left with a hamstring injury. That's 3 corners that left with injuries or sickness or whatever. Kyler Gordon is on IR. He can't come back until week 6. Eddie Jackson was out this week. Like they have no one in the secondary either. Denver can throw on Chicago. That I think that they can do. So we'll see. But ultimately, oh my God,
like 31-3
bet on the side. Oh, that would be disgusting. It could happen.
It could. Like it's one of those things too. Like you're going into the point of like, okay, do they give up on Fields? Like I don't know. Like they have first round. They like depending on what the Panthers do. They have like, could they be tanking for Caleb Williams here? Like Drake May? Like their backup, right? They dropped. They cut Peterman, right? So it's Tyson Badgett who played.
I believe, didn't they pick up Peterman again? Something weird happened. I feel like they might have cut Peterman to as a distraction for what Justin Fields was saying about like his offensive.
Right, it was that day.
Yeah,
it was like the FBI raid and everything else. And because I remember people making jokes like Peterman got cut, and they're talking about the FBI raid. Like, no, I'm just not good at playing quarterback. But either way, you're either putting Nathan Peterman on there or Tyson Badgett, who played Division II football. Like, I don't know. It's one of those. The side again, like maybe it's got to be the lowest handle on a side this weekend, right? Like, who's jumping in here?
Yep. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I actually don't know in the eyes of an average person which of these teams they can't like deal with more than the other. As the Raiders went for it on 4th and inches here and threw a touchdown pass over the middle, looked like to Devontae Adams. So we're gonna get the Raiders leading the Steelers in this game. All right, another game I'm really looking forward to next week is the Ravens and the Browns. Another AFC North matchup. Browns open in the -2.5 range, -2.5 plus 103 at Pinnacle. The total at 42 right now, and juice towards the under. So we're at like a 2.25 type of line, in like a 41.75 type of total, if people understand what I'm getting at. But Ravens not impressive at all today. The Browns super impressive today. Kind of the Browns did exactly what I thought they should do against Tennessee, which was just like air it out, throw the ball. And that worked for them offensively. It wasn't the best offensive performance ever, but 49% success rate, 0.14 EPA per play, ended up scoring 3 touchdowns. They dominated time of possession. They had the ball for 38 minutes. Pretty like clear-cut win. Their defense, okay, if anyone has not seen this box score for this game, I would implore you to look at Tennessee's offensive numbers. They had 6 first downs. They had 94 net yards of offense. They averaged 2.1 yards per play. An abomination of an offensive performance. 28% success rate. Shit kicking by Cleveland. Baltimore didn't look good. The injuries may have caught up to them. Seemed that way. Offensively, something wasn't clicking for them today. And ultimately, they lose that game at home in overtime to the Colts. I have this like opinion or like this vibe in terms of the way that the market tends to treat these AFC North games, where the underdogs just almost always take money. It's very similar to Baltimore Cincinnati from a couple of weeks ago or last week, where Baltimore takes a lot of money on game day. I kind of feel like if it's going to go anywhere, it's going to go towards Baltimore, because we're now at the point where this number is kind of implying that Cleveland is slightly better on a neutral, or at least even on a neutral. And I'm not sure people are ready to buy into that just yet.
Yeah, I think this is for sure towards Baltimore. One, for the reasons you said, I don't think people want to agree with Cleveland being slightly better. But like the injuries, this is 2 games in a row now. And like obviously Baltimore played Cincinnati with Burrow on one leg, but they've had a ton of injuries. So I'm not like going to sit here and be like, okay, this is their offense, right? They struggled with the Colts. Like I can't really, like, OBJ was out, Ronnie Stanley, Linderbaum, like all these, it's a lot. And so, Owe was out on the defensive side. Ajabo got hurt today. So that's a thing it's basically, it's like, it's only going to go this way, because they're either going to get good in, like maybe if the injury news is bad, this goes to 3, but even still, like, I don't know. I still have this Cleveland thing. Like maybe Tennessee is just really bad. Like, and they just threw it. And like, are they going to be able to throw the ball on Baltimore like they did today? I don't know. Can Baltimore generate the pressure and make Deshaun Watson look like he did against the Steelers? It's a tough thing. Cleveland, Watson's super variable. He's tough for me to gauge right now, but I think it's Baltimore is where this is more likely to go for sure.
So the thing for me today was Baltimore's defense played well again. Now it's just Gardner Minshew. There was some big Zach Moss runs, but overall the defense didn't let them down. It was the offense. Lamar Jackson became much more of a runner today. Part of that, as someone mentioned, no running backs left. They're down to Melvin Gordon. That's true. So it was like Lamar Jackson just running the ball a lot, but they couldn't get anything going through the air. Cleveland's defense, we might have to pump the brakes a little bit early because of the quality of competition so far. But Cleveland's defense looks ridiculous. Between Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Tennessee, when you look at what they've done, they have not allowed anything in 3 games. They are generating a ton of pressure. This is Greg Newsom with Greg Newsom out as well. I think he dislocated his elbow last week. Like, I think I agree with this, where like under's got to be the look here, unless maybe this is like, does Cleveland's defense look this good this early because of the quality competition, and now they take a step up in quarterback as Kenny Pickett just hit a bomb deep down the field on third down. Already regret not playing the over here. But I don't know. Like, I just feel like I feel like the market will react in a lot of these games by just saying, give me the points, give me the underdog. And I think Baltimore's more likely to draw money just purely because of that. But there is a possibility that Cleveland is just very, very good.
Yeah, I think this is a huge data point. Definitely if like the offensive line injury report goes well for Baltimore, this is a huge data point for Cleveland's defense. Because one, I mean, Jackson is mobile, so like maybe that makes things tougher for them from a pressure standpoint and actually getting home. But if the Baltimore's offensive line is like full health, good to go, and they're still just living in the backfield, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this is like, if you just constantly generate pressure, it's like automatic that your defense, like I remember like the Steelers were like this, where they had like nobody in the secondary for years, but they just dominated the defensive line. And it was like, why is their defense good? Like, well, the quarterback has no time to live. So that's going to be the big data point for me, is like, I'm still not believing in them yet, because like Pittsburgh's looked terrible against everybody. Burrow's playing on one leg. You know, it's one of those things where like, you got to, again, we're starting to get to the point where things are believable, right? Like, we're getting enough data points. I think this is a big one for Cleveland.
Yeah. I personally, I think the range on what Cleveland can be is extremely wide right now. I don't think that their defense is as good as it's looked, and I don't think that their offense is as good as it looked today. I think they kind of had a dream matchup today, right? And they didn't even try to run today. They said, Deshaun, throw the ball on these guys, and listen, he picked up 5 yards at a time. He did have some downfield shots. He hit Amari Cooper on a touchdown. It looked way better, but the Titans secondary's trash. Now, Baltimore's isn't great on paper, but they've held up so far this season, and they could get either Marcus Williams or Marlon Humphrey back possibly next week. Neither of those guys is on IR, not to my knowledge, at the very least.
I think Williams is on IR.
Did he go on to IR? Okay, so it would be Marlon Humphrey, if anything, coming back off of the foot injury. Yeah, you're right. Marcus Williams is IR till week 6 with the pec injury. So there's that. I don't know. It does feel like a good buy low spot on the Ravens.
I would say it's like the traditional, like, you know, like I always think it's like the novice bettor, like, hey, like the points that people make usually, like, hey, team looked bad last week and this team looked good, bet on the team that looked bad. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like there's always a little bit of an adjustment there, but you're not getting 3. So, you know, it's not on the key number right now. But yeah, I don't know. Cleveland's, both of these teams are kind of like, I'm still trying to figure out if Baltimore's offense can figure it out. Like, they just maybe it's the AFC North. They just always play close games. That division is just allergic to anybody winning by margin, it seems like.
Just the inconsistency, I think, of the teams as well. Interesting comment. I'm scared of this game. Lamar's not good under pressure, makes rookie decisions when pressured. He will fumble a bunch. So it's funny that you say this. And listen, this is just like an arbitrary endpoint. It's like one game. But I vividly remember, like it was yesterday, the COVID year, 2020, Ravens-Browns. It was a game that I lost on a safety at the final play of the game. The final score was 47-42. The Browns were chasing around Lamar Jackson that entire game, and he just kept making play after play after play. It was Lamar against Baker at that time. But that is ingrained in my memory of him just carving up this defense. It's very different now. Jim Schwartz is there. Personnel's better, generally speaking. But I will never, ever forget that game, and never forget that safety right at the end as well. 47-42. Oh,
yeah. I think was that on like was he running around on that safety? Did they take like a holding? They took the holding penalties on there too. Was that game? Yeah, that was Harbaugh doing Harbaugh stuff there. But I think one final point in Cleveland is we now have a week of non-Chubb film. That's an interesting to look. Like you said, they didn't even care to run the ball. Like, that's not what Cleveland was. So maybe they caught Tennessee a little bit there. That'll be something interesting to watch with them going forward as more and more film comes on what their play sequencing is going to be.
It seems like the chat remembers the game. And Spencer, you're right. It was the Monday Night Football game where he ran to the locker room. No one knows why right now, but that was definitely waddling to the locker room. I will never forget that game. I was like, stay there, Lamar. Please do not come back. We need Cleveland. All right. On to the next game. We're going to skip a bunch here because got Steelers, Texans. There won't be an open here from Pinnacle, as is with Rams, Colts, Bucks, Saints, Commanders, Eagles, Bengals, Titans, Raiders, Chargers. Skipping through all those because it's either Sunday Night Football or the 2 Monday Night Football games, and we're going straight down to the 4 o'clock slate for next week, which is, unfortunately, I'm a broken, beat, and scarred man. Tony did ask if I was going to show the Cowboy symbol. I will show it here because I'm still a Cowboys fan, and I still think the season's going to be fine. But it was ugly. And now they return home to take on Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Line is 7, teetering on 6.5. 6.5 more of the fair price on the game there, and 42.5 as the total. Lots to talk about in regards to this game. Let's start with the Cowboys, because obviously it was a pretty embarrassing performance today. They lose outright to Arizona. I think people need to just calm down a little bit, take a breath, and realize that the offensive line was in a bit of shambles today, especially up the interior. Zach Martin just doesn't miss games, and they can't afford for him to miss games, generally speaking. What was really surprising, and not surprising in the sense that we don't know, we know the weakness of the Cowboys defense is their run defense. It was just surprising how much success the Cardinals had pounding the rock in this game with James Conner. Seemed to open things up for everything. I don't know. With Trayvon Diggs now on IR, a lot of people are going to really question the defense. I just think that was probably a stinker game, honestly. And they just happened. And I would probably just wipe that from the slate and say, forget about it. If we get the offensive lineman back next week, it's a very different story.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that the Chiefs went into Indianapolis week 3 last year after we all saw Matt Ryan could not throw a football, and the Chiefs lost to the Colts and then won the Super Bowl last year. So, it's a long year. And I'll say it it's one of those things where maybe the offensive line was able to go. I know they were pretty much game time decisions, and it's hey, we're pretty big favorites anyway. Maybe we can sneak through. Obviously that didn't work out. There were some big plays in there. I think their defense made adjustments. They really struggled in the first half. Second half was much better, but the offense moved the ball. They just kept getting down there. They kicked the field goal down. They turned it over on downs. They had to kick another field goal and threw an interception in the end zone. I'm not worried about it. I think they're fine. Again, now it's just hey, we don't have that gimme game where we can kind of rest some people where we need to. And I don't think that they're not going to do that against the Patriots at home. They can't risk really losing another game to an inferior team like that. So I'm not worried. I think this performance, they're figuring out things, right? They didn't have Diggs, so they got that late in the week. So maybe the game plan had to change, type of thing. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
McCarthy was a disaster today. This was definitely noticeable.
Those 2 runs
stuff. Oh God, man.
The 2 runs inside the
guy,
you're down 2 possessions.
McCarthy play calling was mind-numbing. It really was.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I will say. The Patriots, today. Bill Belichick coached that game like he knew the Jets were not scoring in that game and was very content to do that. And it almost ended up being a mistake because the Jets were this close to Randall Cobb catching a Hail Mary to win the game. But Belichick sometimes he just acts like the biggest cuck. You would see so many teams just stomp on another team's throat that can't move the ball. And he's punting on all these 4th and 1s and trust the defense. And they got away with it today in the sense that Zach Wilson is useless. And New England is missing Jack Jones, who's on IR. They're missing Marcus Jones, who's on IR. And they're missing Jonathan Jones, who has an ankle injury and was out this week. if that same cornerback group is missing next week, it's going to be a problem for the New England Patriots. Yep. They didn't see that. They didn't manifest itself today against Zach Wilson, who can't. I don't even know how Zach Wilson is in the league, let alone starting NFL games. But very different story, and it does feel like a bargain on Dallas. Like at short of a I'm actually surprised that this number is short of 7.
Yeah, I was going to say if this actually goes to 6.5, feels like it's going to immediately pop back to 7 because, like, they looked fine for the most part. There were some big plays for Arizona, is what it is. But again, if they get the injuries, I feel like the injuries definitely to the offensive line, like that's going to trend more, even if say Jonathan Jones is back next week, like what Dallas will get back on the offensive line is probably more valuable than what New England's getting. And I'll go back to I just, this defense, like Mac Jones against this defense, good luck. I understand that there were big plays today, but New England's offense doesn't excite me. And it's the same exact thing. Like part of the reason that I think Belichick is just like a dick and just I'm just going to sit here and be like, beat me. Go ahead. You beat me, Zach Wilson? Sure. But it's also part of it's like the offense isn't exactly like, hey, let's go get a yard because I'm confident we're going to get it. No, I'd rather him go 90 yards on us. So yeah, I'm like 6.5. I feel like that doesn't last very long if that comes up.
This matchup does bring back PTSD for me. Betting the Patriots at home, I think a couple years ago, I believe +4 or 4.5, and the Cowboys going down the field in overtime. I think to score a touchdown. They didn't need to. The Patriots, I think, had the first
in overtime.
No, I don't. I think the Patriots had the first possession of overtime, and they punted. So Dallas could have just won the game with a field goal.
Yeah,
but they marched for the touchdown.
Nothing worse than sweating a cover of just kick the field goal in overtime, and then the defense is just getting mauled. It's like, oh great, they all they had to do was just get in the field goal range and tackle the guy, and that's the game.
It is. The total at 42.5 is interesting. Pretty low number again for a second straight week for Dallas. It'll be good conditions, obviously, with Dallas playing at Jerry's World. I don't know. It's these totals in the low 40s in good conditions. I'm not sure I necessarily agree.
Yeah, Dallas is that weird team where if they get it going, they can pretty much score at will. And again, I think it's one of those things if the offensive line is in, you get good news there. That's ticking up to 43 for sure. I understand New England makes me nervous, makes you a little nervous there, but it's not hard to get to 42. It's really how many games, again, we said it with the Vikings game, right? It was this is going way under. And it was well, how did that not go over? How many times does that happen when you're betting an under, right? It's oh, we're good. Yep. And it's wow, they just scored 24 points in the fourth quarter. What happened here? But
exactly.
So yeah, I definitely think that's more likely to go over than under.
Okay, moving on. Other game in the late slate next week. The 49ers will have extra rest at home, taking on the Arizona Cardinals. San Fran laying 14. The total is 42. Now, we've seen the Cardinals win today, be extremely competitive for 3 weeks now. This is everyone buying in on the Cardinals at this point now. The appeal of the 14 is going to be pretty high with pretty much everyone at this point, considering they've played 3 close games.
And their first halves the last 2 weeks have been incredible.
Yep.
They're scheming up big plays. They're efficient on offense. I joked about it against the Giants. That was the Caleb Williams tank in the second half. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But after seeing them against Dallas today, I don't know. Maybe they're just a well-coached offense in the first, they can scheme it up. Maybe it's more a film thing that'll happen. But I think this number is kind of fine. It's just really going to be does San Francisco push it? They play slow. They're okay with just grinding it out. But I don't want to lay it, but I could also see San Fran just winning by like 20. I feel like it's kind of fine in this range.
So San Fran has been extremely dominant this year. I think without question, week 1, massive blowout over Pittsburgh. Week 2, they end up beating the Rams by 7. We all know about the McVay field goal at this point, but also like Brock Purdy missed a lot of open receivers in that game.
He did last week too.
This week, same thing against the Giants. Here's my thought on this. I don't know about the number subjectively feels okay. Feels like I don't want a piece. If anything, I'm probably more inclined to lay it with San Fran just because like I think that they're just such a well-oiled machine. But I believe, and here we're going to get into like narrative territory and stuff like this, but I'm pretty sure week 5, San Fran plays Dallas, and that's going to be a big game. So if you're going to lay 14, do you want the possible scenario of starters coming out in the fourth quarter in some type of game? I think that this back door is going to be open for a very long time. I would be, though, inclined. I think San Fran, I know it hasn't happened. Like Pittsburgh, San Fran stays under the total because Pittsburgh couldn't score. Giants, San Fran stays under the total because the Giants couldn't score. Pittsburgh, horrible O-line. Giants, disaster of an O-line last week. Arizona's O-line has held up. Even today against Dallas, their O-line held up. Like, I feel like Arizona's offense is way better than anyone thought it was going to be going into the year. The total at 42, again, I don't know. It just seems like that's a low number for me because I think San Fran's going to score. Well, we got to talk about the Deebo Samuel injury as well, too, right? He's got the rib injury. Are we certain he's going to play, essentially?
Yeah, it's again one of those things. Are we going to see like, hey, we're 2 touchdown favorites. Let's sit them. We're probably going to be fine. But like Ayuk is, you're starting to get a little thin there. I know Ronnie Bell played fine, but like you're really going to put your faith in a 7th rounder. I know Shanahan finds a way to do it with these guys, but yeah, no, I think that's definitely a key thing because Deebo unlocks so much for them. He's just, I don't want to say he's like Tyreek Hill-esque, but kind of in the sense of like, he does it more of like a power Tyreek Hill. Like he's still really fast, but like the broken tackles and stuff. And he just opens up a lot. Like if he's out and like Ayuk's out, like you can kind of really say like, all right, let's just focus on a McCaffrey and make Purdy throw to, Ronnie Bell and Jennings and all this. So, I under or over, I do. What'd you say it was 42? Yeah. 42. I think I would lean a tick. Yeah. Ticking up a little bit if Deebo's in, but again, it's like, I think the week 5 thing, cause that's a huge game for playoff implications. Like I feel like people don't really think about that, but like the head to head's big and they could just sit on it. And Shanahan's not the most aggressive coach, so he could just chill out at like 24 points, 24-0. And like, okay, I'm good.
Seems like the chat is pretty pro 49ers in this game. Connor says spread should be San Fran minus 17. Someone asked if 13.5 is an auto bet for San Fran. San Fran's going to get their typical 30. Listen, every Brock Purdy regular season start, 30 points or more so far for San Fran. And I don't think Arizona has the defense per se to limit them.
Like Dallas moved the ball today.
This one's an interesting comment, right? Arizona just isn't a bottom 2 team, which is what you need for minus 14-ish. We've come a long way on Arizona. Like the talentless team that brought in Josh Dobbs. Like, I'm not convinced that they're not a bottom 2 team. Chicago, I think, is the worst team.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like I would like Houston is probably the next one to be
like, yeah. I think Arizona is still a bottom 2 team. I know they won today, and that's like counterintuitive to what people would think, but I don't know. Like Chicago's not being priced as bottom 2, but I think they're terrible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Chicago is like firmly in the bottom 2. I don't think I can sit there and say that 2 teams should be, dogs to them on a neutral. But yeah, Arizona again. I always say like it's this like you get film out there, like Dobbs. Like, do I really think Josh Dobbs is going to continue the success that he's had? And like again, the Giants have looked terrible. The Commanders are not good. So like I understand they beat the Cowboys, yes. Like, but I think that's inflating our opinion a little bit from like, yeah, they played well against two. Like, they're better than what we thought because I think everybody thought clearly they're the bottom team. But like you said, I don't think they're firmly out of the two. Like, absolutely not. They're in that. They're still in that for me as well.
Right. So, someone asked, like, they are 3-0 against the spread, which, again, spread is like an equalizer, so to speak. It's not necessarily, like there's like Scott. I would 100% take the Commanders already beat the Cardinals, so I don't know how we're gonna talk about them being worse. And I think that was like a pretty misleading game as well. Bryce Panthers is an interesting one. That's where like that they could be really bad, and I'm not there yet either.
Yeah, it's just like my thing with that is like Bryce and I mean Arizona's offense has shown more, so like I get that. So like I feel like Carolina's defense when they're fully healthy is pretty solid. Like they can raise their floor a bit. But again, Arizona's offense is like it's one of the things like I need like can they keep doing it? Like this first half explosions that they've had the last 2 weeks. Can they continue that? Because they didn't have that much success in the second half against the Cowboys today. Like there was a lot of first half success. I think they scored on every drive in the first half, if I remember. I think they had 3 field goals and 2 touchdowns on 5 drives in the first half. So it's kind of like is this are you if you're taking the Cardinals, are you buying high on the Cardinals? Like
Yeah, I'm just thinking in my head now of like neutral field. Who am I taking Arizona against? And I'm not sure it's anyone just yet, to be honest. And listen, I know that they've been competitive through 3 games. It's not me like slandering Arizona, but they're just not like by season's end. I think they're going to be getting blown out, and we just kind of got them at their peak at this point. That's my gut feeling, but I could be totally wrong on that.
I mean, I think the only team that I'm thinking about favoring them over would be Chicago.
Yeah, maybe like, going into today, like I could have considered Houston, like the way Houston was put together today, with like 4/5 of their O-line out, secondary injuries. That would have been in consideration, but ultimately, I don't know. We'll see. I guess this will be a litmus test for for the Arizona Cardinals, but I don't really know. Like it's challenging for me to predict these big spread games in terms of which way they're going to go. We didn't see we didn't see much movement on KC Chicago today. We saw Arizona catch a bunch of money late, but that's because Dallas was with down offensive linemen. So really, we didn't see any line movement over the course of the week for those games. And another big spread. Oh man, Sunday Night Football next week. As Eric Eager would say, this one will be a privilege. The Jets at home to the Kansas City Chiefs. Market is basically 9 right now. 8.5-ish, somewhere in that range. Total is 43. I would imagine this is going to be billed as like a pros versus Joes type of game by like the people who are like, oh yeah, Kansas City coming off blowout win. Everyone's going to be on them. You got to take the big home dog Sunday Night Football. I don't know what number I need to take the Jets, but this ain't it. I don't think.
I think 10. I start thinking about it because there's always the factor of like KC. They didn't have it today, obviously, but like the Jets defense is much better than the Bears. So there's that factor. But like KC just kind of sleepwalks through these games like all the time. Like it's just, they don't care. You can kind of see it. I feel like it's just like, whatever. So yeah, I would need, like, I don't really want to lay it with KC. Like, I feel like this is kind of priced pretty good. Because like, I don't know. It's tough, like, because we said it last week. Like, who's going to be betting Zach Wilson under a field goal against the Patriots? Like, why?
Yeah,
Why
like
do it?
I honestly don't. So like, there's going to be this conversation. By the way, there's no way if this game was played today, going into today, forget about what you know about the final scores today. If this game between Kansas City and the Jets happened today, the number is lower. I like definitely lower.
Yeah.
Probably KC -7, -120 in that range on the road, maybe a 7.5. It's lower without a doubt. So you're kind of paying a premium because Kansas City beat up a very bad Bears football team. I get that argument, but the Jets offense is you're going to have Patrick Mahomes against Zach Wilson. Mo Salah came out after the game and said, Zach Wilson's our guy. We're going with him. Like, there's just no appetite for me to bet Zach Wilson here. Like, what's the argument? It's very similar to the case for against Dallas a couple weeks ago. It's like the Jets defense will keep them in it. The Jets defense has to keep them in it because as soon as Kansas City scores mid-20s, they pretty much cover the game at that point.
Yeah, and like it's one of those things too where like I don't care how good your defense is, like if the offense is on, it's not stopping them. You know, like we've seen good defenses get lit up. I mean, Dallas got lit up today, right? Yeah, I think that's the point of like, you know, from a power rating, just like a strictly power rating models numbers, like, you know, my mean outcome, like even if you say your mean outcome is 7.5, it's one of those things where like I think there's such a fat tail to the like KC blowout side that like it kind of is not your normally distributed game, right? You need to kind of factor in how many. It's like honestly, it's like okay, if I'm betting KC spread, I might as well bet the -14.5 alternate spread. You know, get a decent price on it or something like that. Because I again, they cannot move the ball. And the Chiefs defense has been pretty good. Like I think they've been a little better than expected so far this year. But I don't know how they stay within the number in a way. Like
So this is a good point, right? And I kind of want to talk about this a little bit. So Jets were +8.5 in Dallas. This is true, but we've learned stuff since that game. The Jets didn't cover that game. They got blown out. They were never even remotely close to being in that game. Then they lost at home today to the New England Patriots in a game where their offense, now granted, bad weather conditions. We have to take that into account. But their offense had 2.8 yards per play, 171 net yards of offense. Basically, half of that came on one drive. They had a 29% success rate, which was only above the Tennessee Titans today. To put that into perspective, it was worse than the Atlanta Falcons. It was worse than the New York Giants on Thursday Night Football. So we've learned a lot more about the Jets. Like people thought, they were guessing at what that downgrade was going to be for the Jets from Rodgers to Wilson in week 2. Now we know a lot more. And like Mark brings up a great point. Like KC defense has been not sneaky good, like great through the first. They
shut down
games.
Detroit.
Yeah,
like that was a pick 6 to get to 21. Like you know, it's they've always kind of been. I feel like they always get like sneaky good in the second half of the year. But also that game against Detroit was out without Chris Jones. But yeah, they're definitely. This isn't the typical like, oh, the Chiefs are gonna like they need to score 30 because their defense is terrible. Like this, I think this defense is actually pretty solid. So I'm looking at these Jets drives. Like you had a field goal drive, 8 plays, 33 yards. You did have the 13 play, 87-yard drive, but like they got a big pass at the end. Then you had like 1 play, 0 yards, 3 plays -5, 1 yard, 3 yards, 18 yards, 7 yards. Like it's bad. Like they just cannot move the ball. And I don't think they're moving the ball very well against Kansas City's defense. This is not a bad defense. So like you're not getting an easy yards here at all against KC. So
Spencer says that the Jets have scored 30 total points in 3 games with Wilson. That is true. Also, like where was that comment here? Jets pass rush is lost. So what I'm going to say, we might have just overrated the Jets defense as well. Like that's entirely possible. They got trampled by Dallas's offense for the most part. And this week, like I know the output for New England was 15 points, but New England kind of moved the ball fairly well at times in the game. If we look at like just pure success rate, yards per play numbers for those weather conditions, it was really them just punting on 4th and 1 a whole bunch over the course of this game, 4th and short yardage. What like stands out to me in this game is if the number sits in around the 8.5 range, there's going to be a gazillion Kansas City Chiefs teasers this week.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how there can't be if that's going to be the price.
Yeah, just looking at Wilson's like starts here, you had today they scored 10 against Dallas. Last year you go back 3, 17, 3, 20, 17, 16. Like,
yeah,
it's like, okay,
the ceiling is 20 points, right? That's the ceiling.
They had that weird game against Miami. They scored 40 last year. And they scored 27 against Green Bay. But also, I don't know how many of these games they had pick sixes or anything like that. Like I think that was the Miami. Was that the Skylar Thompson came in like after the first play or something?
Skylar Thompson game.
Teddy?
Yeah.
Exactly. It was Teddy who started.
I think it was Skylar that. I think Teddy started, got injured, and Skylar came in very quickly.
It was like first play, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, like they scored 27 against Green Bay. He threw for 110 yards.
Right.
So and now there was arguments on the sideline with running back like Breece Hall's made some comment. It's bad vibes on this team right now. It's not good.
Yeah. Good point here by Scott as well. That needs to be mentioned, but I will give my opinion on this. So need to get more info on Mahomes. The fact that Mahomes came out to start the second half, though, would indicate to me that his ankle is entirely fine, because there was no way they were going to risk him in that second half with the lead that they had if his ankle was an issue. So I think that that's a non-factor in its entirety. Okay, let's wrap it up here with the Monday Night Football game next week. And we have Pinnacle's a little bit off market right now relative to everyone else. Not that it's a huge difference, but Pinnacle is Seattle -1 at the New York Giants with a total of 44.5. There's going to be a lot of injury stuff to factor into this game in particular. Obviously, the New York Giants were decimated with left tackle and left guard, both out this week, Andrew Thomas and Ben Bredesen. Saquon Barkley could possibly be back for this game. I would expect him to be out one more, but he could be back. Maybe they get Azeez Ojulari back in their linebacking core as well. Edge rusher there for them. For Seattle today, we already know the injuries that they have on the offensive line. Was their left tackle, right guard, right tackle, all out today. Jamal Adams was out, probably back next week off a quad injury. Reek Woolen was out today. Kobe Bryant, another corner, out. And then Trey Brown, another of their corners, left today's game with a concussion. So they have some cluster injuries in the secondary. I'm personally looking for a spot, Austin, to get back on the Giants when they're closer to full health. And this might be the one. I'm thinking possibly next week off extra rest and having faced what I think is like the best team in the NFC by quite a ways right now.
Yeah, and they get the extra rest. So like I think just like subjectively, I think Dable is going to scheme up some. Like I don't even if Seattle's like secondary is healthy, I don't think that defense is very good. Now obviously the Giants have their own issues of injuries, but I think they'll have a good scheme, good game plan for this game, which I think takes pushes me that way. It's dead, so it could flip off, but I do find it interesting that Pinnacle is the least favorite. Like if you want to bet Seattle, go to Pinnacle, from what it looks like. So I don't know if that's a tell, on what their opinion of the game is. I don't know, but it's still early in the market here. But I think Giants could be a little live here. I think that would surprise some people.
Well, they are taking 3,000 on side right now. So like it's a decent pop you can get on the Seattle opener here. So Marcus, listen, I feel like I've been very, very square with a lot of these opinions so far today, at least like my early thought on the game, but this is another good look for me, in my opinion, Mark. If Seattle has survived these offensive line injuries, they haven't really felt them. 2 weeks now, back to back. Whatever Pete Carroll's doing in Seattle with that offense, I mean, it's working. Who's their OC? Shane Waldron, right? I mean, whatever they're doing there, it's working, because it's not typical. You're missing left tackle, right tackle, and then you add in right guard for 1 week, and other teams can't get pressure. But that's been the case. So I don't like the Giants defense. I think they can be picked apart by decent offenses. I think Seattle can move the ball through the air. Where I do expect positive regression for the Giants is their offense. Like, it just cannot be like this forever. And once they do get the players back on the O-line, especially with like the lack of talent I think Seattle has up front on the defense, I could see this being a shootout. I would be surprised if this gets bet down. I think this is a number that's going to go up.
Yeah, I agree there. I think, like, obviously, like I said, the game plan for Dable is going to work out, but like, they're faced a good defense in Dallas. Arizona's defense, I don't think is great, but I also think like Gannon has like experience with the Giants and like how with his time at Philly, so maybe that helped out early. But they turned it on in the second half, right? Like, they scored, and then they scored against a pretty good defense. One of the best defenses in the league. They didn't score like a lot, but like, I feel like their offense is trending upwards from how bad they looked in that week 1 game. Like, that week 1 game was like the nut low of where you could be as an offense in this league. So, and Seattle, they just keep, I don't know if it's the weapons, and like Geno's, like, I feel like I keep waiting for him to fall off. And like, I know, again, the week 1 game against the Rams was weird, but like, they just keep firing away, and like Geno's playing pretty well. So I agree here. I think I would not be shocked if I think this is more likely at 45 from market, like everybody in the market at 45, than if everybody in the market goes to 44 for sure.
Yeah. Listen, Geno's apt to still make a big mistake here and there. He threw a bad pick today. Tons of short field goals for Seattle today. It's still sort of over. Their kicker was 5 of 5. Carolina missed a field goal as well, which was more lengthy. And Carolina did have, like, honestly, the Panthers scored 27, 7 in garbage time, would have scored a bunch more had they not committed a million false start penalties in Seattle. It's going to be very different next week when the Seahawks defense doesn't have the benefit of that. So that's my gut feel here. I'm not super like stoked about this number in terms of backing the Giants, but
yeah,
I am kind of looking for a spot. Like, the number feels right. Seattle small favorites feels subjectively right. It's just the total feels very wrong to me.
Yeah, the key thing too is Seattle's weirdly balanced. Like, they have a ton of weapons through the air, but like, their ground game, like, their Charbonnet and Walker are like punishing backs. So, and they're both like home run candidates. Like, if you screw up, they can pop 40 yards off of you. So like, it's one of those things too where like, you can't key in on one thing, and I think that helps. Like, the floor, they raise their offensive floor because of that. And I don't think, the Giants defense isn't doing it for me. So
Charbonnet almost killed a man today on the Panthers.
That run was nuts.
I can't remember. I think it was the Panthers safety, but my God, he
was flying like
trucked him
6 yards backwards, like
yes.
airborne.
Yeah. If that was Derrick Henry, that would be played on highlight reels forever. But because it was Charbonnet, you might not even see it tomorrow. But holy Jesus, he flattened that guy. He flattened.
Yeah, he went up. Like, he went up in the air. It was crazy.
As we talked about this game, Pinnacle ticked slightly towards the over as well. Not a lot of movement tonight. So I guess people think some of these openers are pretty solid. Again, I had like a lot of subjective leans to some overs here. It gets a little more challenging, obviously, once we get away from week 1 and 2, where we have like more data to work with. So I think a little bit easier to put out an opening line, but I would implore everybody to stay on top of injury reports. That's where you're going to see a lot of stuff move over the course of the next couple days, especially in the early going here. Teams that are dealing with potentially cluster injuries. Today wasn't too bad for any team. Like, we didn't have like a Detroit Lions situation from last week where just everyone left the game. The closest to that was Carolina's defense, I think, today.
Yep.
That had a bunch of players leave, and then they also lost Mingo offensively. But Yeah, that's
So
it. Go ahead.
it's an interesting point you bring up with the injury reports, and like maybe the movement isn't happening as soon off of these openers because of how bad injuries were last week. Like, I mean, if every game I feel like we talked about, it was like, well, if they get like a lot of cluster injuries, it felt like this week, like it wasn't spread out like multiple guys on an O line. Like I think what the Ravens had 7 guys out, so like it's really hard to get involved when you might have a third of the starting 22 out of the lineup, right? Like, so maybe that's part of it.
There's not a number on the board yet that stands out to me. Like, let's say I'm betting openers. There's not something that I'm like, oh, I absolutely have to get this now. Like this is wrong and it's going to move. The closest I've come to that, like feeling that I have a strong bet, is Buffalo -2.5 against Miami. But I'm also very uncertain about that because I can see, like, I don't know. It's funny. I actually don't even know how my model is going to react to that game until I run that number on Tuesday morning. It could be anywhere. I have no idea where it's going to be, but subjectively, I just feel like that's been a pretty large adjustment. That's the only game that stands out to me as like, yeah, I kind of want a piece of Buffalo, but that's without knowing what a number is. And also just like, does anyone want to fade Miami at this point?
Right.
You'd be hard pressed to find people. So that's the one that stands out. But the one that stood out to me last week was the Detroit Lions. And then within the next day, half their defense, like half their team was decimated by injuries, including offense. So yeah.
Buffalo's one for me, and then Dallas is kind of close. But it's not really the opener. Like since it was kind of shaded towards possibly 6.5, it's like I'll wait around and see if that pops up. But I think that's just like, for lack of a better word, the overreaction on the like Dallas lost, so they must be bad. Like, let's pump the brakes a little.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. We're both modelers. To a certain extent, do you have to limit Miami some? So there'll be times where I just completely get rid of a game because I feel it was an outlier. Now, usually those are the games that are played in like inclement weather, right? Remember when Buffalo played New England Monday Night Football a couple years ago? I'm like, this is not an indicator of like any talent for either of these teams going forwards. This game, I don't think you can exclude it, at least not in the early going now. It's going to swing things, but Miami's offense, in my opinion, is that good. So I don't think I'm going to do anything with this other than just like keep it as a data point for now.
Yeah, it's interesting. This happens more in college. So like where you get these crazy games where just, I don't know. It's more like the spread's bigger. So these things happen. But it's one of those things like where at garbage time, where your limits on it are. To where is like, is this game mean anything at 51-20, like, are we doing anything anymore? So that's where it kind of gets, it's not like, hey, we're cutting this back, we're going to cut his production in half. Like, no. Like that was like a flawless game on every level, like rushing the ball, passing, all of it. So you can't knock them for that. This isn't like, I think Cleveland played like 3 games in a row in crazy wind a couple years ago. And I remember their offense was like super undervalued. This isn't that.
Yep.
At least I don't.
I think one of those was against the Eagles. Nick Chubb had like a big run down the sideline, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I remember that Cleveland year. We made some.
Remember that field goal that went like 30 yards left? It's like, we don't need any passing numbers, any rushing numbers. It doesn't matter. Like,
that killed Baker's stats that year for sure. In throwing in those wins for 3 straight. I think one of them was a road game. I'm pretty sure it was like they just could not buy a break with the weather, but
it was like 20 plus miles per hour every time.
Yeah. For everyone who's watching right now, if you wouldn't mind, just hit that like button down below before we sign off here. Just a reminder, we're back tomorrow on the Forward Progress channel right here on YouTube and in audio form. It's G-Stack George, who we're now renaming G-String George, just because somebody in the chat did last time. G-String George with Suma and Clev TA. That's live tomorrow, 2 o'clock. They're going to give their takeaways from today. Look ahead to next week's games as well. Tons of content here on Forward Progress. Thank you, Austin, for tuning in or for joining me at AMOC419 on Twitter. For everyone out there, if you do want to give him a follow, check out his stuff with The Athletic. He does both NFL and college football. Until next time, This has been another edition of Forward Progress, part of the Hammer Betting Network, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. Everyone, good luck getting down on your openers, and hopefully you get some closing line value. I'll see everyone on Wednesday for the Best Bets show. Peace.